Ron Busby, the president of U.S. Black Chamber. Just a little bit about Ron. I could spend all day talking about his instrumental leadership and the work that he's doing to help advocate for all of us. But he brings a business management skills, the lifetime of community development experience to the organization. He's a former successful business owner himself. He's been recognized as one of the nation's best CEOs. Grew up in his first company, a USA Super Clean, from $150,000 annualized revenue to over $15 million in just 10 years. I think, Ron, you ought to be on Shark Tank. I think we could learn an awful lot from your entrepreneurial skills. Early in his career, US Super Clean was recognized as the largest Black-owned janitorial firm in the country. He's also started and grown 2 additional janitorial firms that resulted over $4 million in annual revenue. He's an advocate for our work here, serves on the Pfizer Small Business Council, National Newspapers, Publishers Association, Foundation of Board of Directors, White House African American Leadership Council, and so many more organizations that he not only supports, but provides service to. So Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you so we can take advantage of the time of the experts that you have with us. And again, thanks for your support and leadership in today's conference.
Thank you so much, Brian, for having me on this panel. I really believe this is going to hopefully close us out on a positive and up-spirited, up-tempo conversation. And so, again, I know that I'm the last panel of the afternoon, and so I don't want to take up unnecessary time for everyone that's participating. And so, again, I'll introduce myself, and then we'll kind of jump right into it. He gave you a great deal of history about mine. What he did not tell you is, though, that I had the opportunity to attend a couple of different universities. My first one, I got accepted into Stanford University. And I remember my first day there, they said, look to your left, now look to your right. One of you are not going to be here in 4 years. And I picked up my bags that day. I said, well, that's probably me. I don't want to cause my parents unnecessary heartache, but I transferred to Florida A&M. And that first day at FAMU, they said, look to your left, look to your right, get to know each other, go into business together, get married. This is how we change America. By us partnering and getting to know one another, we will change the direction of this country. And for that, I will forever be entrusted with my HBCU experience. And for that, I am truly blessed to be joining you this afternoon and talk about the role of industry in career readiness. And so I have the opportunity to introduce Janine Kuntz, Bob Worshman, Katie Richards, and Marina. And I'll let them go through a little bit, tell a little bit about themselves. And so Boyd, if you'll start us off, just give us a couple of minutes of highlights of your career and some of your experiences over the last, over this journey. Bob, are you with us?
Okay, yep, I've got it. So yeah, Ron, Boyd Worsham, and I'm the, as you said, president and CEO of the National Center for Construction Education and Research, much simply and more typically known as NCCER. And I came up through the, I'm the poster child for what was vocational, referred to as vocational education, in that I came up through a carpentry program in high school and moved on to work for a national design build contractor for 38 years, with that connection from high school to employment being made by my carpentry instructor. He introduced me to the CEO of a large contracting and engineering firm, and I went to work there. Like I said, spent 38 years to today there. Was responsible, went from carpenter apprentice to senior vice president of operations for $1 billion plus dollar per year, $1 billion revenue per year organization. And so kind of proof that our career technical education system works in this country. And I was on the board for NCCER. And about 2 years ago, moved over to, or 3 years ago, moved over to NCCER and took over as the CEO approximately 1.5 years ago. So our mission at NCCER is to develop craft professionals. We don't refer to them as construction workers. We refer to them as craft professionals. And NCCER is a provider of a workforce development system for the contracting community to develop craft professionals in about 40 different crafts. So that's what we do, and a little bit on myself, Ron. Thank you.
Well, man, I am so happy to hear you. So often, I think young people today think the only way they can make it is through technology. Oh, I got to go into the tech field. I got to be a lawyer. I got to be a doctor, an engineer. And I tell folk there are still great careers. There's still great opportunity in the trades and in the industries that many of us have turned our back on. You heard my story. I was in janitorial services for almost 20 years. But I started in the same vein most young people do. I worked at IBM, worked at Xerox, was a senior VP at Coca-Cola, and left that to go run a small janitorial service. But I had a vision, and it grew that small company from 5 employees. And I saved my mother, my father, my 2 sisters, and me to over 1,500 employees and the nation's largest. And so, Boyd, thank you for having us this morning. Mary Ann, if you can do the same, give us a little bit of background on yourself, and then we'll turn it over to Katie and let her give us, and Janine. But Maureen, you want to go first? Mary Ann?
Yeah. Hi. So yeah, my name is Mary Ann Marola. I am the Education Programs Manager for McDonald's. And I think the exciting thing about working in the education space at McDonald's, first thing is we understand that there's both an education gap and a skills gap that exist in this country. We think we do have a role to be part of the solution. At McDonald's, a lot of first-time employers, like McDonald's, we provide employees with some basic job readiness skills, things like showing up on time, getting along with coworkers, dealing with customers. Think back to your first job, you learn a lot. And all those skills are critical in any job and any career path. But we think when employers go beyond that and also invest in additional skills training and formal education, then there's a huge benefit to the individual, the employee, and the community. So for us at McDonald's, we have a series of programs which we call Archways to Opportunity. And these are education programs for the employees in our they include everything from ESL, English as a Second Language classes, to a partnership with the Career Online High School, which is an online high school diploma program specifically designed for working adults who didn't get a high school diploma the first time around. We actually have over 1,600 McDonald's restaurant employees who have gotten a high school diploma through this program. We also provide college tuition assistance, again, both for our hourly restaurant employees as well as for our management restaurant employees. And we also provide education and career advising as part of our Archways to Opportunity program. So we knew we didn't want to provide one size fits all. We wanted a variety of different education programs to help people. So, whether McDonald's is going to be their first job and they're just going to be with us for a few months, or whether they intend to go further with McDonald's, these programs are available for our people.
So, Mary Ann, my last job in corporate America, I was a senior VP at Coca-Cola. And I tell this story often. I used to get to work at 7 a.m. and I wouldn't leave until 7 p.m. And I was there every morning for about 3 months. And I had a peer I was 27, he was 56. He was a white guy. I was a young black guy. And I wasn't trying to be this great employee. I just didn't know the industry that well. But what I did see was that in my community, there were several Black millionaires that were McDonald's owners. And so I would work from 7 to 7 at Coke, and I would leave and go work at McDonald's from 8 to midnight because I wanted to understand what it was like to run a business with a system. And what I learned is it's not about how much salt you put on the French fry, because the same French fry you get in San Francisco, you get in Seattle, you get in Singapore, but it was really about a system. And so I said, when I go into business for myself, I wanted to take the same types of processes and the same systems to implement in a very hands-on business, which was janitorial service, so that I could grow with size and scale. The one thing I'm going to talk to you about is there used to be this commercial about Calvin. And Calvin was a young Black boy who got his first job at McDonald's. And they used to show him walking to work every morning and how proud he was of his job, how proud the community was of him having that job. And then it went on to show a series of those commercials about Calvin's growth within McDonald's. And it was a great story. And I would love to be able to see them do that more often.
That's fantastic. And Ron, by the way, one of these days we need to go for a beer because I want to hear all about your experiences when you were working in the restaurants.
but we'll do a large Coke. And Janine, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me, Ron?
I can.
All right, great. And like you, Marianne, I really enjoyed, Ron, hearing about McDonald's and Coca-Cola. What a great story and great work ethic there. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Janine Coons, and I am the Chief Workforce Development Officer at SME. SME is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the manufacturing industry. And we have our purpose, and our nonprofit purpose is to advance the industry. And we do it through two ways. One is technology. So as you can imagine, manufacturing is a very technology rich industry. So there's all kinds of things that are constantly happening. Actually, today, we just opened the doors for about 8,000 people to come to our Rapid Plus TCT event, which is all about 3D printing. So really, the advancements of technology is a big part of what we do as an organization, but I'm the lucky person who gets to focus on the advancement of people. And we firmly believe that all the technology could exist and everyone can buy the same machinery and materials and processes, and but it's really the people that are behind the thinking and the programming and the maintaining of that equipment and technology that really, really makes that competitive differentiator for a company, a community, a state, a country. So with that, I oversee all of our education and training within the organization. We do quite a bit from high schools up through industry. And so I know this panel is all about the industry side. So we get the fortune of working with employers for the largest manufacturers in the world to many, many small organizations. And certainly the idea of talent and what's happening inside of these organizations where they're suffering from not enough talent, and the talent they do have, they're also challenged with that technology outpacing their people. So a lot of those challenges, both on the national scale and then micro inside of an organization, is what we work pretty tirelessly at. And I am also a founding board member of the CCD, a proud member of the Coalition for Career Development, and also sit with Boyd on a group for Skilled Trades Coalition, which is all about, really kind of redefining and re-imaging what different roles are, as he said, the craft professionals, right, Boyd, in terms of what that looks like in terms of young people and how they view their career opportunities. So I'm looking forward to the panel discussion, and thanks, Ron.
Thank you. So Katie, we'll let you end this, and then we'll go right into the questions.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Richards, and I'm Mahida's Membership and Advocacy Manager. Really, anything to do with membership, you can reach out to me, and then also advocacy. So we have a couple different initiatives I'll talk with everyone today about that involves getting in front of students who go to technical schools, getting in front of high school students, and then also students that are part of universities that we partner with, and pairing them up with members from our association so that we're ensuring they get a job. Mahida in general, we serve the equipment distributors, but we also have a lot of manufacturers that are part of our organization. So everything we do has some type of networking piece, education piece, and advocacy piece. And thank you all for inviting me today. I'm happy to be here.
So thank you to all my panelists, and we'll now kind of get into the Q&A section. So I'm going to start off with you, Janine. All of us lived through probably some of the most challenging years of our lives under the COVID scare that we had from 2020 to 2022. And now it's actually coming back again. And during those periods and months, we all heard about the shortage of employees, and that was causing a tremendous amount of upheaval from business owners to supply chains to just basic retailers. We also heard about the conversation of mandatory employees that had to go to work versus those that had the ability to be able to stay and work at home, and others using technology to get the jobs done. But in that, how were you able to continue to find and recruit the talent that was needed to fill these jobs, to fill these opportunities, and to keep the American economy going forward? Janine?
Great, thanks, Ron. Yeah, I'll represent our manufacturing companies since that's most critical here. Certainly SME as an organization also dealt with those same challenges, but what we found as a manufacturers, you know, and really every employer, right? We dealt with employees mostly looked for jobs within about a 20-mile radius of your home, typically, right? And, you know, when COVID hit, a lot of things happened. One, everyone went back, you know, into their homes to work, but the world changed how it looked at hiring, and remote work became pretty commonplace. And so as businesses started to look to rehire, it was no longer that they were just looking maybe within that 20-mile radius. Lots of people started looking all over the country and world really for their employees. And the same happened for the employee itself. So really many aspects, Ron, took, I think, companies by surprise when it came to these changing dynamics of people who didn't want to go back to work, didn't want to go back into their maybe office environment. Certainly those in production needed to stay on. But where we were able to help pivot was, one, to help employers understand that they should be looking, and this was something that manufacturers were really challenged with before the pandemic, but it became, I think, a good catalyst to force this industry to diversify. It had been a pretty, it still is a pretty homogeneous industry, and looking to these diverse populations and changing their dynamics from everything from recruiting, but not just when they recruit employees, but also once they obtain them, and finding the tools to make sure that the culture and the environment is conducive to you know, maintaining the employer. So it's not just the attraction side, but also retention. So some elements where we've also helped is we actually helping employers and students. We established a diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarship. We funded about $2 million to again encourage young people to pursue careers in manufacturing and team those up with employers. We also launched a new certification, industry-driven certification for entry-level workers. So these would be people who are really entering the field of skilled labor. And there's amazing certifications, as many of you know, that already exist, various pathways in welding, machining, mechatronics, production technicians that are many years of great success out in the industry. But we did find, for some people who were brand new to the industry, who had no experience in manufacturing, who were looking for jobs and giving us an opportunity to diversify our populations, they needed a stair step that was maybe a foundational level before some of those advanced certifications. So we launched the Certified Manufacturing Associate, which was a nice program that allowed, again, new entries from various underrepresented populations, some high school students, to get their feet wet and then get encouraged to get in the door, advance in their career, or pursue these additional higher level certifications. So I would say there's many aspects of how we kind of tackled it, Ron, but those were a couple I'd like to highlight.
So Boyd, I know in construction, when I look at job sites around the country, I always saw, as was mentioned, a diverse workforce. But many of the challenges were due to the closure of the borders. There were a lot of jobs that weren't being filled because they just didn't have the worker staff available. How did you, in the construction industry, tackle some of the job openings, the lack of potential employees to continue on building the country, especially now that we're looking at new infrastructure opportunities? What is the National Center for Construction Education and Research doing to ensure that they have the bodies that are educated and have the knowledge to continue to build what we were having and what we're seeing here today?
Now, Ron, it's, you know, construction it is diverse in some geographic areas of our country, and it's not very diverse in others, right? So, but necessity is truly the mother of invention, right? So our industry has a shortage today of about 650,000 people, with a projection of that being about 2.3 million over the next 5 years. So we will not solve the workforce shortage in our industry unless we get creative and figure out how do we better tap into, serve, train, and educate and skill up the underserved population that we just aren't doing enough with currently. So one way that we think is really important that we have dove into fully is to develop a tool, a technology tool that matches new entrants with jobs in their communities or even beyond. Many are okay with leaving their communities, or those communities may not have the higher paying jobs they need or desire. So we have, NCCR has developed what we call our career starter tool to try to make those connections. Because historically in construction, people that went into construction went, in many cases, about 50% of the time, roughly, made those connections through somebody they knew. Well, that makes you wonder, or that creates the question of how many are we missing because we don't have a better way to connect people with our industry. So they get curious, but how do we take them from curiosity to career? And we feel like that's a great opportunity to leverage technology, which is open to all in these days, and make those connections. And so we see that as a huge opportunity to connect new entrants into the industry with jobs, like I said, in their area or beyond. Another thing that I think is really important, and we at the R in NCCR is research. We're working hard on developing some guidelines through our research department that'll talk about how we can get more females into the construction industry. We, in many cases, the construction industry and the jobs that my colleagues on this panel have to offer are much better than many of the service industry jobs that many of our, many females in this country and males have. We need to create awareness and make sure that we know how to accommodate, especially the female in the construction workspace. So you think about this. We need to understand what challenges them to go into this work, because it is good work and it's high paying work. We need to figure out what those accommodations need to be, and we need to educate the employer on those accommodations. They may not be able to work the long hours if they are a single mother, but I promise you, most of them will work really hard for you if they are a single mother, right? So we have to look at it from gender as well as other diversity measures, and figure out how we tap into that diverse population that we have not done as well in some parts of our country as we would like in the construction industry. And lastly, we really, as an education, as a not-for-profit construction education foundation, we have to be able to train the many different nationalities, but especially the Hispanic workforce in our country to be highly productive, to take these jobs and be skilled enough to turn these jobs into careers that will create a better life for them and their families, and not neglect them on the training. So our curriculum, our testing, our assessment systems, as well as our performance verification systems are all being translated into Spanish in all of our primary crafts. So we think those will all make a big difference, but this industry will have to get serious about better bringing in that diverse workforce better than they have been to truly solve this workforce shortage that we're experiencing.
So Mary Ann, I get the opportunity to speak a lot of places, and many of them are on college campuses. And you're talking to young folk that are getting ready to start their careers. And maybe it's because of the hat that I wear, but I usually get the conversation of, I want to own my own business. I'm a Gen Zer and I want to be an entrepreneur. How have you guys, from an education standpoint, really kind of had those conversations, and how have you had to adjust your recruiting specifically for the Gen Zers that are coming out today in this workforce to prepare them for the real world opportunities that exist?
Yeah, well, and it is funny, Ron, because we do have some experience with like being a multi-generation workforce. workforce, right? We've always had multiple generations working at McDonald's. That's one thing that we have nailed, right? You will have the 16-year-old working at their first job alongside of the 44-year-old who's the manager of the restaurant and who is on track to become, like the next step, which would basically be like a supervisor overseeing several different restaurants. So I think we're pretty good at managing to get people in the door in terms of different generations. But, it's interesting because you talk about, getting on that college campus, talking to Gen Z, talking to different generations. My dream has always been parents would say to their children, hey, I want you to go work at McDonald's, put in 15 hours a week. That's it. Put in 15 hours a week at McDonald's, and they're going to pay for your college education as long as you continue putting in those 15 hours a week. Like, for example, we have a partnership with Colorado Tech University. And with that Colorado Tech University partnership, it truly is zero out of pocket for the employee, for the McDonald's employee. Again, all they got to do is put in the 15 hours a week. And the great thing with Colorado Tech University is they can study those entrepreneurial classes, right? And learn how to go about and becoming an entrepreneur if they wish. But the other cool thing that I do want to mention, especially looking at the group who is on the panel, one of the number one questions that I get within McDonald's when people are messaging me or emailing me with questions about our education programs, they're like, hey, wait, I've got somebody who wants to go to trade school. They want to study cosmetology. They want to study HVAC. Do you cover that? And the really great thing that we built into our program is that the restaurant employees can use their college tuition assistance at any accredited college or university. So that includes community colleges, that includes if somebody wants to study the trades, study HVAC, study cosmetology. So that is included as well. We didn't want to dictate what pathway somebody would go down. So yeah, I also do think somebody who wants to get that entrepreneurial, spirit, they're going to have to take some classes to learn a little bit about managing a business. So we can help with that.
So Janine, we hear a lot of talk about high school students and college students, but really, as I'm talking to people, you have people that are in 11th grade, 10th grade, 8th grade, already talking about their careers and where they see themselves in 10 or 15 years. And I think so often, once you get to college, you're really there to learn, how to think, how to solve big problems, and how to work in teams. But what are you doing for that K through 12 student to prepare them for that opportunity? Either decide, hey, maybe college isn't for me. Maybe I do want to go to college, but I want to be specific. I don't want to waste 4 years, 6 years, 8 years of my life to determine what I want to do. I want to start off thinking about that in the 8th grade, so that by the time I am making the decision on where I want to spend the next 4 years, I'm making the decision that has really been nurtured in me for some time with my parents, perhaps with mentors and other people that are in possibly the field or industry that I want to go into. So Janine, if you can kind of speak to what you guys are doing there with the organization.
Sure. And thank you. And it's an excellent question and a complicated one. I know we wish it was all easier, but and having one middle schooler and one high schooler, I definitely know that journey. But so a couple of things. One, I would say that's what makes this Coalition for Career Development an amazing group and the efforts and what we're trying to do, because the idea of career readiness being the number one priority of our American education, I think, is what fuels us. I think we've all seen the importance of that and the growing importance. But with that, interestingly, I just finished our board of directors meeting for our nonprofit I mentioned, and we just talked about, Ron, the idea of even having to go deeper into middle schools. We don't do as much in middle schools, but I'll share what we are doing in the high schools in particular. We, one, I mentioned, we do scholarships. So that's certainly one way of supporting those that are pursuing careers. And that doesn't mean that they have to go on for 4-year degrees. That might be that they're going into a 2-year, as Mary Ann said, it might be a trade school or a technical pathway but we just awarded about $1 million last year, with our largest being a $40,000 scholarship. And again, we have those focused, and we're putting more focus on those in need than just metrics of academic metrics. But the program we offer is called Prime. It's Partnership Response and Manufacturing Education. And it's a program that is investing money into schools to help ensure that kids are getting access in high schools to what jobs look like out in industry, in particular around manufacturing. So we're helping put equipment, the right kind of state-of-the-art equipment inside of schools, getting them access to curriculum that is again aligned to industry needs, getting them money for teacher training, professional development, and a middle school camp to kind of create that pathway of young people into the high school program. And we're proud to say that we've served about 16,000 high school students in that program. Nearly half of those are students that qualify for free or reduced lunches. 40% of those students are what would be reflective in manufacturing of underrepresented populations of individuals in terms of what we see in manufacturing. And lastly, I would say we also, because I mentioned we're doing our event on 3D printing and additive manufacturing, we put on student summits. So this is where we actually bring, so while it's an industrial event with industrial equipment and many, we have about 8,000 people over the next few days coming in to do their professional development. We pull from them some that are willing to be keynote speakers to these young people. We have a program called Bright Minds. So the young people who come into the event get teamed up with mentors, as well as they do a hands-on activity to see what 3D printing is all about. And so it's kind of what we do, student summits. And last year, even despite COVID, we were able to have 1,000 students go through our SME events, see technology, see what it looks like, and talk to people in industry about those careers, about their journey, and really reflect how they got there. Kind of like you said, Ron, share their story so they realize not everybody might look like what they see on TV, as we talked about earlier, the doctors and lawyers that they might be accustomed to from their watching of TV, but actually start to see all the things that are kind of behind the scenes. And unfortunately in manufacturing, not always clear to our young people about how the automobile actually shows up in their driveway. So there's a number of things we do. Still, as you mentioned, I think what we're really embarking on is how do we go even younger though and get engaged with the middle schoolers and I should say elementary too.
So you mentioned a couple of really good points, and I'm going to stay with you, and then I'm going to ask Boyd to also answer this question. I was the president of an organization called the 100 Black Men, and our slogan was, and it was really about mentoring young Black men and boys. And we always used to stand on the slogan of, they can't be what they can't see. And so often young men and women, young boys and girls never see themselves in a leadership role or never have the opportunity to have a mentor that has a similar experience and or background as the young person. And so with that, how are you trying to make sure that you're matching mentors with potential proteges that could really appreciate that relationship and that development?
Ron, what you said, I think is so critical, right? And I kind of touched on it just briefly when we talked about what can companies do and what are they doing, because it's one thing to say you're going to go and try to attract a different, maybe women, I'll use myself, into your organization. But if they come in, you've only done half the battle if you haven't really addressed when they get in, if they have a mentor, someone who looks or has maybe a background similar to them. So certainly we are coaching organizations on that, but the part you mentioned is actually teaming up efforts when we do these programs with the young people in our mentoring programs. So we are matching people, as you said, by profile, so to speak, for lack of a better term, to people who look like them. Actually, today, I'll just say we announced a new partnership with, it's called Women in 3D Printing. It's very fascinating because this is a group of individuals, they're volunteers, they were women who are in the field of 3D printing, and they mobilize themselves. They're all volunteers. They all have other working jobs, and they've been growing at a pace that's incredible. And we're doing a panel later at our event with these women to show exactly like you said, we want young women to see women that are in the field versus so they could speak to them. So I think there's lots of ways, but if I had to say something, it's probably one of the most critical things employers could do is keep that top of mind and not just go at it from an attraction standpoint, but think about the experience when someone's inside their four walls.
Boyd, I'm gonna ask you the question. I'll pose it a little differently. As a Black business owner and one who advocates on behalf of Black businesses and Black concerns, we typically talk about minority programs, diversity and inclusion. And no disrespect to anyone that's on the call or listening to the conversation today, but they have not worked for Black communities. When we look at minority programs, diversity programs, it has historically been white women that have benefited from those programs. What are, in your company and agency, doing to make sure that they're mentoring Black and brown communities and young people to make sure that they have mentors and opportunities to be able to grow within your industry?
Ron, I think, we're seeing huge growth in many of our inner city programs through, as you mentioned, the ABC chapters and the trainings that they deliver within those programs. We offer a true mentoring guide, a trainee guide and an instructor guide that is used in our programs to, now it's used across, all students, all trainees. So it's not specific to any particular group, but it is used to help the instructors and ultimately the supervisors on job sites understand how to truly mentor people, right? It has to be an engaging experience for the mentee and the mentor, or it will fail over time, right? And you send this terrible message of that mentee didn't matter enough to keep it going, that the mentor would not, didn't put enough effort in to keep it going. So we think there is some formality to it and some education to it that we produced a guide for that is used quite a bit, and we see it used quite a bit in the some of the more urban areas where we are seeing a higher diversity mix than we see in some of our more rural programs. We're in several thousand high school programs and community college programs around the country, so we see diversity as an opportunity to truly change the complexion of our industry in many ways. And as I said earlier, I see it as important that we look at it from a gender diversity in my industry as we do from a racial diversity. So we are providing technical, a formal training program so that those programs, can be successful, and those mentees, because we're all on this call. And we have this problem that can be a bit overwhelming, right? We need millions of people. Now, you can always argue we all in industry should have started a long time ago or done better at it when we started. But the only way we solve this is one person at a time, right? We have to solve a multi-million person problem, one person at a time. But that's the cool part of this, because that will be the legacy that everybody on this call, not just for my panelist colleagues here, but that will be the legacy that all of us have at the end of the day, is our ability to change the lives of others, and to do that across all ethnic groups, all, both genders. That matters, and that'll matter at the end of the day. And we've got to do that millions of times. And if we can do that successfully, we change lives for the better. We improve our business, our industry, we improve the companies in our industry, and most importantly, we improve the lives of those millions of people. So to me, it's exciting, and it's not that hard. We just have to do it, and we have to look at each one of them as a success, and mentoring and providing that caring environment and nurturing environment is what will make the difference for people to stay in these jobs once they take these jobs and see them as a career opportunity they really are.
Thank you to all of you guys. I'm going to ask one last question, and I'll ask each of you to chime in. At the U.S. Black Chamber, we're looking for three things from all of our partners, that being both private sector, public sector, folk like yourselves that really are the future. And so we're asking, first off, intentionality. And Boyd, I appreciate your fact of saying, hey, look, we're going to be intentional on who we recruit and how we do it. But it's got to be an intentionality. The second one, it's got to be transparency. There needs to be transparent information about how to participate in these careers. There needs to be transparency about who you're hiring, who you're bringing on, and more importantly, there needs to be accountability. And so when we go to an organization and say, share us the numbers, I'm really proud of McDonald's being able to now come out and say, hey, 4% of our owners are Black. I think it's 8% of your workforce is Black. That gives the outside world the information that they need to be able to say, this is a good employer. That employer needs some support. Here's an opportunity for us to work together to be able to increase the possibility of more diversity, because when there is more diversity, there's a greater opportunity for you to get input as well as increased customers and increased employees. And the last one is accountability. And so when you're saying, hey, we want to make sure that we're hiring a diverse workforce and it's not being done, is there accountability on your project managers, on your supervisors, on your division presidents to make sure that they're going outside of their current environment to recruit the talent that America is now having to be able to fill those million+ job opportunities? And so I'm going to ask each of you to talk about if there's data, if there's resources, if there's information that you would look for from either internal resources or external, what may they be? And so we'll start with you, Janine. If there was something that was out here that could help you do your job better, to help you fill those positions, to help you bring in additional great candidates, what might it look like to you?
Well, it's a fantastic question. Right? Sorry, I was hearing a background noise there, so apologize about that. I think one thing that has been a challenge is data. This category that you just talked about, I think is, and I'm also finding some of our partners in the corporate industry is telling us, trying to access people in the right organizations, right? And how to find people, how to get to them. I think that's probably the biggest thing we've been hearing is how do I go about? So sometimes there's these investments and there's even government programs that get created, and good associations or organizations create programs and put things together, but getting those programs connected with the people who need them is probably what I at least see as one of the greatest challenges. So I actually would be looking forward to hearing if someone on the call has some great tools or techniques of connecting those of need and those who are looking for, diversifying and trying to get to underrepresented populations, how those mechanisms are working. But from a data standpoint, Ron, I'm not too familiar with anything that's very good at addressing what you're talking about.
Boyd, what about yourself? Have you guys used data to be able to help you recruit? And if not, what other types of information and or resources, including data, would be helpful to you in your industry?
Well, Ron, we're like everybody else, like Janine. There's not enough data out there now, but we do use data. Obviously, we mine our own internal data to see what our completion rates are and who's completing and in what parts of the country and what training centers. We're in about 6,000 different training centers, so we can get a pretty broad look at that. We also have to look at the data to see what those completions are over time, right? How many are our programs accelerated enough? Are people staying with them to complete? So internal data is really important to us. The other piece of data that I wish we had more of is to really understand job satisfaction and career satisfaction for people, because one of the biggest problems I believe we have in recruiting in all of these different industry sectors is people, we sit on these calls and we all do our jobs and we think that people understand our industries. Young people coming in do not understand, right? But yet we can't understand why they are not choosing us. Well, they don't have the awareness of our industry. They don't have awareness of the careers in it. Then we talk about it in the form of jobs, right? We don't talk about it, the pathway. We don't talk about, become, learn the business of construction. We talk about learn a trade. Well, nobody wants to do that for 50 years. None of us on this call wanted to do it for 50 years, right? But we still speak of it in those terms. So I wish we had more data around how to truly help people understand career opportunity, education and training opportunities, and what really matters to them to make that career decision that will provide for them the way the construction industry is provided for me. And we're working on trying to find that data. And if it is out there, as Janine said earlier, please somebody help me find it, because my researcher would sure like it, and I would sure love to have it as well.
So when I was in college, I went to Florida A&M, a
Yes, sir.
historically Black college and university in Tallahassee, Florida. And right across the tracks was Florida State.
Know it well.
And I was a good enough athlete to where I could attend college at Florida A&M and ran track at Florida State. But when it was time for recruiting opportunities, the Black students all had at Florida State one class at Florida A&M. And the reason being is because when corporate America was coming to look for Black talent, they didn't go to Florida State,
No.
where they might find 1 or 2% of the student population be Black and may have an interest in coming to work for them. They went to Florida A&M, where there was an abundance of Black talent, and that's where they went. And so to hear people, and we hear it all the time, hey, we do more business with Black businesses if we could find them, is just an old excuse. You got to go fish where the fish are. And so with that, we would love to be able to talk to all of you about where we think there's some great potential new hires, great potential employees, and great potential talent. Katie, I'll let you go. I know you have a great story there, and I know you guys are doing great things about it. What data could help you even do a better job there?
So it's interesting when you say data, and Boyd, I'm wanting to mimic you, but gosh, I feel like it might just be even more simple than this, and it's just change. It's do what we're not doing now. It's change mindsets of the leadership. It's do things that might feel out of our comfort zone because it's not something we've historically done. And I think, to me, I feel like the data is already there. It's glaringly obvious what the problem is. So we need to go out and do things differently. And it's like, kind of like you said, I mean, giving our members, distributors and manufacturers, HCBU colleges to be going to, and going to recruit from other places that you historically aren't. So data aside, I would love more data, but I'm ready to go. And I'm ready to do something different. And I want the leadership to feel that way too.
Well, we are here to help you do something different when that opportunity presents itself. And Marianne, I know you guys are doing a great job there. I'll let you give your last comments here in reference to data and resources that may be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we're trying to get to, and we're starting to make inroads, is get better connected with the local workforce investment boards and their data. 2 weeks ago, we had a fantastic meeting in Indianapolis. It was 3 McDonald's owner operators in Indianapolis, the local workforce investment board, and a local nonprofit. And we got together and we talked about, okay, for the 3 McDonald's franchise owners, what are their challenges in terms of recruiting and retaining employees, and how can these groups work together? Our vision would be that somebody could come in, work at McDonald's, get the education benefits, get whether it's the associate's degree, bachelor's degree, whatever, and then that will help them prepare for jobs that the Workforce Investment Board is having trouble filling in the local community. Whether it's a medical technician, whatever it is, the Workforce Investment Board has the data, we think in most cases, on what the needs are in the local community. So if we can get all these parties together and talking and sharing data, then perhaps we can, do a win-win-win for everybody. We get people working in McDonald's restaurants, we get them getting associates and bachelor's degrees, and we get them going on to filling higher paying jobs in the community that the community needs filled. So it looks good that we're hoping we can launch something like this in Indianapolis, and we would see what other cities